Let's talk about wrapping paper. The thing about Christmas and any really gift heavy holiday is it's really hard to get away from waste while still having that feeling of excess that you kind of get with the holiday, the feeling of generosity and being taken care of and plenty. It comes with a lot of waste. You can minimize that by being very conscious about your decisions. One of the big contributors is wrapping paper. IKEA started selling like reusable gift bags that are jute. I have a few, and then I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And then I found some more on Etsy. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. But these look really easy to make myself. And I'm all for Etsy sellers selling them and offering selections. And there's honestly a lot of the bags that I got from Etsy are much nicer than mine because they came with drawstrings, and I'm just not willing to put that much effort into all my bags. No, because last year was still a pandemic. We hadn't had vaccines yet. We're still being very careful. We are still being careful now. But last year, no, everyone's gonna do Christmas in their own space. And thinking about how can I make it so that everyone has a great Christmas. I went a little overboard on Christmas. I went a lot overboard on Christmas last year. Last year was a big Christmas, and yeah, got a lot of stuff. One of the things that I did is for gifts, I made everyone their own Christmas bags, and I made them their own giant Christmas sack to put all of their gifts in, all of their little Christmas bags in. And then we dropped them off at their house a day or two before Christmas, so then we could all open them on Zoom on Christmas Day. And I love the Christmas sacks. And like my mother-in-law was really excited about the Christmas bags because it had been something that we had all had a conversation with every year of like, oh yeah, wrapping paper is not great. I don't want to keep buying wrapping paper. I'm going to use this wrapping paper up and then I'm going to do something else. I don't know. Well, the answer is Christmas bags. Christmas bag. We didn't have any giant Christmas sacks for our family. That needed to change. So this year, I'm making giant Christmas bags for my family. It's pretty easy. Like, it's the hardest part about the sacks is like the drawstrings, so they open and close. But if you want to make Christmas bags without any drawstring and just tie your own string, it is such an easy beginner DIY project. As long as you know how to work your own machine, because I don't know what machine you have, so I can't walk you through it. As long as you know how to work your own machine, at least like enough to sew a straight line, you can make these. It is easy. For my Christmas bags, I used 3 yards of flannel per bag. I tried last year to make them out of 2 yards, and it just didn't really seem tall enough for how wide they were. But having made them out of 3 yards, they're huge, way too big. I didn't give a lot of bulky presents this year, so it just kind of looks a little womp womp. So if you're making these, unless you go really hard on Christmas, you might just need to like cut the width down a little bit and still use 2 yards, and that will still be plenty. That'll be plenty big for a Christmas sack. I folded the fabric, found the middle, cut it down the middle, and then put the bags right side together. And if you have a pattern, you want to make sure that they're both facing like up. The long way is both facing up, because if it has like an upward direction to your fabric, then when you cut it in half, one of them is going to be upside down. So flip it. And then because I wanted to have a drawstring, first thing I did was figure out where I wanted to put the drawstring, and then mark that spot all around, and then clip between where the drawstring would go so I could fold that back and sew it where the seam allowance is going to be. So if you give it a 3/4 inch seam allowance, then fold it back to 3/4 inch and sew that down. And then I sewed the channels. So I folded the fabric so that kind of like a pillowcase has that big giant hem. You want a big giant hem because that's going to help you form your channel. So sew along the bottom of that to make the bottom of the channel, and then the top of where your cut is, sew all that around. Then you're gonna put those two pieces together and sew all the way around 1, 2, 3 sides. So that's all sewn up. Being careful when you go through where the channels are that you feel where the opening is and don't sew that closed. You want that to stay open so you can put your ribbon through when you're done. What I did then is I cut a square off of the bottom corners. So I cut one square and then I used that as a template to cut the other square. And truth, my squares are more like rectangles, but it is what it is. Then you're gonna take the fabric with the rectangle, and you're gonna grab the corners and pull it. So pull it so you have a straight line, and do the same thing on the other side. And ba-da! Your bottom is done. Super easy. Then all you have to do is the drawstring. So I use just plain old grosgrain ribbon. You can get it in a bunch of widths. It doesn't really matter what width you choose, just so long as you make your channel big enough for it. Now I used 7/8 of an inch, and because these are giant sacks, I like the thickness. So I would go bigger for a very big sack, but if you're making a smaller sack, then use a smaller ribbon. And if what I did was I took a dowel and I just taped my ribbon end to the dowel and pushed it all the way through. If you have a giant needle, that would also be great and you wouldn't have to waste tape, but I used what I had, and I had tape and I had a dowel. Push that through and then tie it or sew it so that it can't come undone. And you can, from this, still pull it. It pulls a little bit better if you have one on each side. So then starting from the other side, I did the same thing. Pushed a ribbon all the way around and then sewed it shut. So then you can grab, this is the fun part, you can grab the ribbon on either side and pull, and it will tighten up really quickly and nicely. And then I like to just take those ribbons, now that you have long ribbons, and tie them and make them pretty. And that's how you make a Santa sack. So after I finished making the Santa sacks, I had these squares of fabric left over from the corners on the bottom that I cut out. What you do with these, I sewed one of these seams here and then flipped it around, flipped it inside out. And then tuck in the open side. So fold it down fold it down, and then you sew that shut, and then top sew all the way around, and then you have just this little magical thing. It can be a coaster, it can be a wipe, you can use it for cleaning, you could use it to wipe your nose on, whatever you want, but you will end up with 2 per bag of these little things at the end of the day. I have some reindeer fabric left over from my Gunny Saxon's dress. I'm going to make another bag. So we have this present, and I'm going to just lay it on the fabric and get a rough idea of how big the bag needs to be. Then cut it. Now I did the snip and rip thing, which, I mean, I love snipping and ripping because it's fun and it's fast, but sometimes it really messes up your fabric. So snip and rip with caution. But for this project, it doesn't need to be perfect. So, and I had plenty of fabric, so if it's something that requires a lot of precision, if it's something where you don't have a lot of that fabric and you have to be conservative, just cut it out. Just schedule extra time in your day and cut things out. But if it doesn't matter, the way that this project doesn't really matter, have fun, snip and rip. So I snipped and ripped, and then I was able to fold this over so that I didn't need to cut out two pieces. I just cut it out wider and folded it over. Always double check to make sure that your pattern is not flipped upside down by however you're folding it. I folded it over, and then because it's folded one side, I don't need to sew it. So just sew those two sides, the bottom and the side, and then you're going to take the top part, fold it down, and you can do a double roll and hem around that. And that's it. Flip it inside out. It's done. You're good. And one upgrade that I added this year to my bags that I didn't do last year is, instead of just sewing it on with a ribbon that immediately falls on the floor, gets lost, never to be seen again, and then every time you go to wrap a present you have to decide if you care enough to find a ribbon. This year I had a brainwave and I just tacked the ribbons on. I used the sewing machine because it was easy, and I like easy. All you have to do is just get a piece of ribbon, maybe a little bit longer than the width of your bag for aesthetic reasons, and just sew down in the middle. Then you always have a ribbon for your bag, and you won't have a pile of ribbons that gets swept up in all of the Christmas garbage. Yeah, makes life a lot simpler, and it's really cute.